"Ma'am, you can't be in here." The words came fast and firm, cutting through the calm hum of the air conditioning in the downtown D.C. banking lobby. It was 9:14 a.m., a warm Thursday in May. Sunlight poured through the towering glass walls of Dominion Federal, painting golden stripes across the marble floors and pristine mahogany counters. Behind the front desk, a junior associate in a pale blue button-down, mid-20s, nervous energy, name tag slightly crooked, stepped in front of a woman who hadn't spoken a word since entering. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. She simply tilted her head and said quietly, "Excuse me." But the man doubled down. "This area is for executive-level staff and clients only. No solicitors. No drop-ins. If you're here for a meeting, I'll need to see ID and clearance." At that, several other eyes turned toward the woman. A few from the lobby. One or two from a glass-walled office beyond. You could feel it shift in the room. Assumptions locking into place. She was black. Mid-40s. Hair pulled into a low knot, edges sharp. Wearing a crisp navy blazer, dark slacks, and clean white heels. No jewelry. No purse. Just a leather-bound folio in one hand, and in the other, her phone, still open to a calendar notification that read, 9:30 a.m., Dominion Federal HQ, Boardroom C, Quarterly Financial Review. But the kid didn't look down. Didn't ask. He only stepped closer and added, "Ma'am, you're going to have to leave, or I'll have to call someone." And that was the moment it shifted. Not for her. For them. Because the woman standing there, her name was Kennedy Royce, CEO, majority shareholder, chair of the board of Dominion Federal, the bank they were standing in. She didn't just run it. She owned it. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been turned away from something you built? Have you ever had your name left off a list, your title ignored, your presence treated like a problem, because the people in charge couldn't imagine that someone like you could be the one they should be listening to? If so, then this story might not surprise you. But what happens next? That part they never see coming. Kennedy lowered her phone. Looked the kid in the eye. "You're new here." He blinked. "Yes." "First week." He nodded. "How did you?" "Because anyone who's been here longer than 5 days knows who I am." The assistant manager appeared now, early 30s, heels clacking across the floor, blazer tight, eyes already scanning Kennedy like a threat on two legs. "Is there a problem?" she asked. The young man stammered. She walked into the restricted area near the vault suite. "No ID. No pass." The woman nodded, arms crossed. "We've had a lot of phishing attempts lately. I'll have to ask you to leave the property until we can verify your purpose here." Kennedy exhaled. Not in anger. In disappointment. "Do you know who handles your property leases?" The woman narrowed her eyes. "I'm not sure why that's relevant." "I do. I signed the paperwork for this building 6 years ago. My company owns this block. The concrete you're standing on? Mine." She took a step closer. "And the badge you're wearing? The job title you hold? The bank account paying your salary?" One more step. "All mine." At that exact moment, the regional director, Martin Doyle, white late 50s, sweat already starting to show at his collar, stepped out from the frosted glass hallway with a confused smile. He'd just gotten off the phone with corporate. "Kennedy, Ms. Royce, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were coming in this way." The two employees froze. Kennedy turned slowly. "They asked me to leave." Doyle's face dropped. No, there must have been some confusion." Kennedy didn't blink. There was no confusion. There was assumption. There was disrespect. There was systemic nonsense hiding behind policy. He opened his mouth to speak again, but she held up a hand. "I'll be back at noon. And this time I won't be alone." By 10:30 a.m., Kennedy was back at her private office suite across town. Not rattled. Not angry. Resolved. She sat down at her desk and opened one folder, then another, then picked up her phone and made 3 calls. One to her general counsel, one to the head of HR compliance, and one to the woman who ran her crisis PR team. I was profiled in my own bank this morning, she said calmly. By noon, they're going to understand what that really costs. At exactly 11:59 a.m., a black Lincoln Navigator pulled into the executive parking loop behind Dominion Federal's glass tower. Out stepped 3 people. No fanfare, no drama, just quiet force. Cassandra Wynn, general counsel, 6 years with Royce Holdings, Harvard Law, reputation for being able to take down a corporate empire with nothing but a binder and a question. Raymond Dobbins, VP of Compliance, former Justice Department auditor. Calm, bearded, moves like a priest, but speaks like a prosecutor. And finally, Amari Fields, 28 years old, Kennedy's PR director and digital strategist, dressed in monochrome and always with a phone in one hand like a weapon. Together, they weren't backup. They were the response team. The front desk receptionist, same one from that morning, looked up as they entered. "Can I help? Why?" Cassandra held out her badge. "We're here on the authority of Kennedy Royce. CEO, you'll page Regional Director Doyle. Now." The woman blinked, reached for the phone, fumbled it. Raymond opened a file folder before they even made it past the front lobby. "While we wait, this is a formal internal compliance notice. Effective immediately, all staff interactions with executive visitors will be logged and submitted to ethics and conduct. Noncompliance will be documented. Retaliation will be grounds for termination." The receptionist just stared. This wasn't a meeting. It was a strike. Upstairs, Martin Doyle was pacing in his office when the call came through. "They're here," the receptionist whispered. 3 of them. 3 of who? Her team. There was a long silence. Then Doyle straightened his tie, wiped his palms on his slacks, and started rehearsing his apology aloud. It was a misunderstanding. There was no malice. Protocol is protocol. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Cassandra wasn't just there to document what happened in the lobby. She was there to open every drawer. 12:08 p.m. The 3 of them were led into conference room A on the 10th floor. Doyle arrived 2 minutes later, sweaty but smiling. "Ms. Wynn, Mr. Dobbins, always a pleasure. I assume we're just clearing up a simple incident." Cassandra didn't sit. She opened her leather binder and removed a printed image from Dominion's internal database. It was a screenshot of Kennedy's access profile. "Explain to me why the CEO's biometric clearance was deactivated on this floor last week." Doyle blinked. "What?" "We pulled internal logs. Her thumbprint was registered on all prior visits. Then suddenly, access restricted to lobby-level clearance only. That doesn't happen by accident." Raymond leaned forward. "And when was the last time your onboarding team received implicit bias training?" Doyle hesitated. I'd have to check." "You won't need to," Raymond replied, pulling out another sheet. "It was 12 years ago." Meanwhile, Amari Fields was already logged into Dominion Federal's media dashboard, monitoring social chatter from a morning's confrontation. A blurry video had surfaced. A bystander had caught part of the exchange between Kennedy and the desk clerk. The caption read, "This black woman just calmly told 2 bank employees she owns the building they're trying to kick her out of." Legendary. It was already past 80,000 views. Amari looked up at Cassandra and gave a silent nod. The world was starting to pay attention. Back in the conference room, Doyle was unraveling. Sweat on his collar. Fidgeting. Offering water they didn't take. "Look, this is all very unfortunate. But surely we don't need to escalate this into something legal." Cassandra shut her binder. Then finally sat. "Martin, we're already past unfortunate. And we're exactly where we need to be. We're not here to threaten. We're here to audit." She leaned forward. "And until this branch understands that the woman you tried to escort out isn't just your CEO, but your employer, we'll keep digging." Raymond added, calm as ever, "We're also reviewing hiring and promotion records for this location. As of this morning, we pulled the last 14 quarterly reports. The demographic data paints a very specific picture." Doyle swallowed hard. Cassandra closed her case. "You'll be getting a request from HR for the entire video archive of lobby surveillance for the past 18 months. We're done here for now. At 12:47 p.m., Kennedy Royce stepped out of the elevator into the lobby for the second time that day. No one stopped her. No one asked for ID. Even the security guard straightened up. Amari was waiting at the entrance. They didn't see it coming, she whispered. Kennedy smiled faintly. They never do. The folder landed on her desk at exactly 8:32 a.m. the next morning. Cassandra didn't say a word when she handed it over. Just placed it gently, her fingers resting on the leather for half a second before letting go. Kennedy looked up from her tablet. Bad. Cassandra nodded once, then left the room. Inside the folder, for years' worth of data, line by line, branch by branch, and buried in the middle, the numbers that proved what Kennedy had long suspected. Out of the last 52 new hires at Dominion Federal's flagship branch in D.C., only 3 were black. None had been promoted. 2 had left after 6 months. 1 had filed an HR complaint and was quietly reassigned to a satellite branch in Virginia, one that didn't even offer advancement opportunities. And that was just the hiring data. Worse still, customer profiles. Raymond had quietly pulled anonymized complaints from Dominion's internal CRM system. He found 74 entries flagged as client misunderstandings. 61 of those involved black customers. In over 40 of them, the client's legitimacy had been questioned before ID was even verified. Kennedy closed the folder and sat back in her chair. For the first time in weeks, she felt it. Not anger, not even disappointment. Resolve. This isn't one incident, she said aloud. It's a system. At 10:05 a.m., she called a meeting with her executive board. 10 directors, 3 in person, 7 on video, all seasoned, all smart, all until now quiet. She didn't ask for small talk. She went straight to it. Yesterday, I was asked to leave a building that bears my name on the lease. Not because I broke protocol, not because I posed a threat, but because the people on the floor couldn't imagine someone like me being in charge. She let that sit, then picked up the folder. This is not about me. This is about culture, about what we've allowed to fester beneath the polish. If this company can't recognize its own leadership, it won't recognize the damage it's doing to its clients. She made her next move clear. Effective immediately. A third-party audit of every branch's hiring, promotion, and complaint records. A staff reshuffling of all leadership positions in underperforming locations. And something that made one director's jaw drop. We're shutting down the flagship branch temporarily. Full operations suspended. Staff placed on leave with pay. We rebuild it from the inside out. There was silence. Then murmurs. Then resistance. Shutting down the flagship could cost us client trust. It sets a dangerous precedent. What if this blows back on the board? Kennedy didn't blink. You're worried about backlash from doing the right thing. Where was that fear when we were doing the wrong thing? Outside her office, word had already started to spread. Staff whispered in the halls. HR was suddenly very, very busy. Security guards nodded more respectfully when she passed, not from fear, but realization. And Cassandra? She wasn't done. She leaned against the doorway, file in hand. There's more, she said. Kennedy raised an eyebrow. Cassandra handed her a document marked confidential. Anonymous tip came in last night. Internal leak. Someone's been burying promotion recommendations from branch managers who wanted to uplift diverse hires. All filtered, all suppressed. Name that keeps showing up in the chain of approval. She tapped the top of the page. Martin Doyle. Kennedy sat very still. Everything in her voice stayed level. Call him to my office. Now. 12 minutes later, Doyle walked in, still in his perfect suit, smile stitched on, hands clasped like a prayer. Kennedy didn't stand. She didn't even offer him a chair. She simply turned the file around and slid it toward him. Do you recognize this email chain? His eyes scanned, slowed, stopped. This is taken out of context. No, Martin, she said, voice razor sharp. This is the context. Everything else was the lie. He tried again. You don't understand, these things happen at scale. Not everything gets read by the same eyes. I've had hundreds of submissions come through. And yet, she cut in, every single minority advancement request somehow hit the same dead end. You. He tried to rise. She spoke before he reached the door. You're on immediate administrative leave. Your access is revoked. You'll receive a formal letter before noon. He turned, flushed and furious. You're doing this for optics. She stood now. Calm. Centered. No, Martin. You are optics. I'm doing this for justice. By noon, the branch doors were closed. The security team had new instructions, and a press release had been drafted by Amari that ended with one line. Dominion Federal believes that justice doesn't start when you make a mistake. It starts when you choose not to repeat one. The podium stood alone at the front of the Dominion Federal Rotunda. 2 flags flanked it, one American, one company branded. Dozens of reporters buzzed quietly behind the velvet ropes, cameras already warming, recorders blinking red. The air smelled like coffee, nerves, and anticipation. It was 10:01 a.m., and the city knew this wouldn't be a normal press conference. Because Kennedy Royce didn't do cleanup. She didn't apologize when she hadn't done wrong. And she wasn't here to explain away racism with a brand statement. Behind her, a simple black screen bore 4 words in clean white font. Ownership, accountability, integrity, change. At exactly 10:05 a.m., she stepped out. Calm, tall, dressed in charcoal gray. No notes in hand, no smile for the cameras. Just a glance across the room before she took the mic. Good morning. I want to thank you for showing up today, the same way I showed up at my bank last Thursday. Except when I did, no one thanked me. No one greeted me. They asked me to leave. A few flashes went off. She didn't flinch. Let me be clear. I was not mistaken for a criminal. I was not confused with client. I was seen as out of place because they could not fathom that the black woman walking through their lobby was their boss. She let that sit. And when a system cannot recognize its own leadership, is no longer broken, is functioning exactly as designed to erase, to reduce, to exclude. In the second row, someone cleared his throat. He stood. Tall, white, dark gray suit. Thomas Crane, CEO of the Crane Banking Group. A longtime rival of Kennedy's in the D.C. financial scene. Excuse me, he said loudly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we all need a little context. Cameras turned. Kennedy paused, expression unreadable. Crane continued. Let's not turn a single internal mistake into a media circus. Every company has onboarding issues. This kind of public spectacle only hurts client trust. And frankly, Ms. Royce, your decision to shutter the branch, that hurts real employees. A few gasps. Reporters leaned forward. He kept going. Let's not pretend you're a martyr. You're a CEO. Use your boardroom, not a bullhorn. Kennedy looked at him for a full 5 seconds, then stepped out from behind the podium, walked directly toward him, not fast, not dramatic, but like gravity had shifted. The cameras followed, and she spoke just loud enough for the mics to catch every word. Thomas, you don't get to hijack what you didn't build. You didn't wake up and get escorted out of your own institution because someone thought you were a threat. You've never been followed in your own lobby. Never had your credentials questioned. Never been asked to justify your right to exist in a space you paid for. She took one more step closer. And most of all, you've never had to defend your response to injustice to a man who's never once stood up against it. Crane opened his mouth. Kennedy held up one hand. You said I hurt real employees. But the employees I'm protecting are the ones who've been dismissed, passed over, and spoken over. The ones who never get their complaints reviewed, whose resumes get thrown out for having the wrong zip code. And if you think closing one branch temporarily to save a future worth keeping is a mistake, then you don't belong at a summit, Thomas. You belong in a seminar. Applause. Loud. Uncoached. The entire left side of the room stood. Reporters stared at each other in disbelief. Crane sat down. Quickly, Kennedy returned to the podium. I will not make my silence a gift to protect this bank's legacy. If we lose a few clients, let them go. If we shake a few foundations, let them crack. Because the cost of leaving things untouched is paid by the next generation. She closed with this. This isn't about me. It never was. It's about the black woman who walks in here next year and doesn't get asked to leave. It's about her being seen the first time. Outside the building, the story had already hit national news. The clip of her takedown was trending under #NotYourSpectacle. #Royce was right. #You don't own this mic. Back inside, Amari looked down at her phone. A message had just come in from Kennedy's old mentor. One line. She didn't just fight back. She redefined the battlefield. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, Kennedy Royce sat alone in her glass-walled office on the 18th floor. The sun had just begun slicing through the skyline, casting long shadows across the table where she'd laid out 4 documents, a highlighter, and one old photograph, a framed picture of her father in his postal uniform, smiling with 3 missing teeth and a bent cap. "You're always watching when the stakes are high," she murmured. And the stakes had never been higher, because she had just learned something that stopped her cold, something that made yesterday's confrontation look like a warm-up. It started the night before. Raymond had come in late, a laptop under his arm, and a sick look on his face. He'd run a private metadata check across the last 6 months of internal email forwarding logs, flagged anything that mentioned her name or position. Buried in a web of blind carbon copies and passive language was a chain of emails between 2 board members and the chief risk officer. "We may need to start shaping a path away from Royce's leadership in Q3. It's time for a new image at the top, someone less polarizing." Less polarizing. She read it twice, then again. These weren't nobodies. These were men she had mentored, sat with on budget calls, toasted with at annual dinners. And now, they were plotting to edge her out quietly, using incidents like the lobby mistake as proof of incompatibility with brand direction. She closed the laptop, and for the first time since this began, her hands trembled. Not from fear, from clarity. "This wasn't just disrespect," she whispered. "It was a setup." By 9 a.m., she called Cassandra, Raymond, and Amari into her office. They stood, solemn, knowing something big was coming. Kennedy laid out the plan. "We're not just going to respond. We're going to confront it head-on." She would call a full emergency board meeting, not in private, but live-streamed, open to employees and stakeholders. If they want to strip power from the top, let's see how the ground responds. Cassandra looked concerned. This could get messy. Reputational damage. Kennedy cut in. "The damage is already here. We either show them what accountability looks like, or we become the next headline for the wrong reasons." Raymond nodded. "Then let's make history." At 11:15 a.m., Kennedy sent a message to all 10 board members. "Effective immediately, you are requested to attend a live-streamed emergency board session regarding leadership, misconduct, and governance standards. 1 p.m. sharp. Attendance required." 2 tried to dodge. 1 claimed travel. Another cited a family issue. She didn't budge. "Attend via Zoom or submit your resignation. Those are your options." By 1 p.m., the cameras were set up. The stream was live. Employees across the country had tuned in, some from their desks, others from their phones during lunch. The comments rolled in quietly at first, then faster. "She's doing this in front of everyone. No CEO has ever done this before. This is what transparency looks like." Kennedy stood at the head of the long, polished board table. 8 members in person, 2 on screens. Silence. Then she began. "In the past 72 hours, this institution has undergone more scrutiny than it has in the past 12 years. We've seen our culture exposed. We've seen bias made visible. We've seen the impact of inaction. And we've seen people try to cover it up." She looked down the table. Eyes found the 2 men from the email chain. "I know about the conversations. The ones suggesting my leadership is no longer suitable for the Dominion brand." Gasps from a few. The men squirmed but didn't speak. "And I could have handled this in private. I could have sent you an HR letter and done a backroom negotiation. But I won't. Because that's not the leadership you were so desperate to replace." She paused, then dropped the bomb. "I'm proposing a motion to remove both of you from your seats. Effective immediately. Conflict of interest. Breach of trust." 1 tried to speak. She raised a hand. "Let the record show. They called me polarizing. Let the record also show this company made record profits under my leadership. Increased minority lending by 37%. Expanded branch coverage in underbanked zip codes. And scored the highest employee satisfaction in 5 years. If that's polarizing, I'll wear it like a badge." The vote passed. Unanimously. Even the 2 men, red-faced and quiet, said yes. Amari, watching from the side, whispered into her phone. "We just changed the game." After the meeting, Kennedy stood in the hallway, alone. No cameras. No applause. Just quiet. And then a janitor, older black, maybe late 60s, walked past with a mop cart, paused and nodded at her. "Never seen a boss fight like that," he said. She nodded back. "They never gave me a choice." The email hit her inbox at 6:01 a.m. No subject line. No signature. Just a link to a news blog titled, "Breaking, Dominion CEO Kennedy Royce linked to alleged favoritism scandal." She stared at it. Read the headline twice. Didn't blink. Then clicked. The article was written by a small but well-known financial gossip site, funded quietly by private donors from the old guard banking world. The kind that trafficked in whispers, not facts. It claimed that Kennedy had once approved a $1.2 million loan for a tech startup run by her godson, without disclosing the relationship. No criminal accusation. Just concern. Just possible conflict. Just enough to spark a social firestorm. By 7 a.m., the story had spread to 3 major business blogs. By 8:15, a Fox News anchor had called it ironic that the woman championing accountability had a little explaining to do herself. And by 9 o'clock, a subcommittee staffer from Capitol Hill left a voicemail. "We're reviewing everything ahead of your upcoming testimony. Let us know if this loan story is accurate." Kennedy stood at the window of her office, watching the rain slide down the glass like threads of oil. She didn't move. She didn't panic. She just said aloud, "They're scared." Amari burst in 10 minutes later, tablet in hand. "They're pushing this hard," she said, breathless. "Hashtags are starting. Even some of our own partners are messaging me, asking what's going on." Kennedy sat down slowly, then opened her desk drawer. She pulled out a folder. Thick. Label Graham Tech, 2021. Inside, independent valuation reports. Loan board meeting minutes. Conflict disclosures. A signed waiver from the ethics committee. Every I dotted. Every T crossed. She handed it to Amari. "They thought I'd cut corners. I built the corners." Meanwhile, Cassandra and Raymond were already fielding calls from legal. "Is this going to blow back?" Raymond asked. "No," Cassandra replied, because unlike them, she played the long game. Still, they knew it wasn't about legality. It was about optics. A powerful black woman in finance getting accused of favoritism? That's not an accusation, it's bait. And the media was biting. That afternoon, Kennedy held a closed-door prep session with her communications team and legal staff. She didn't rehearse talking points. She rehearsed truth. "They want me flustered when I sit in that hearing room. They want me looking defensive. But I'm going to walk in like I belong there. Because I do." 2 days later, she arrived at Capitol Hill. The hearing room was filled with suits. Men in half frames. Staffers in dark dresses. Cameras trained on her from 3 angles. She wore navy. No jewelry. Hair in a tight bun. Confidence in her spine. The hearing began. They asked about her bank's new compliance reforms. She answered clear and direct. They asked about branch closures, staffing overhauls, and cultural audits. She cited data, outcomes, staff feedback. Then came the question. "Ms. Royce, did you personally approve a 7-figure loan to a company run by someone you were related to?" She nodded once. "Yes." Gasps. Scribbles. She raised her hand before anyone could interrupt. "And I disclosed that relationship formally, submitted all required documentation, and had the ethics committee review it before a single dollar was moved. The company in question has exceeded its repayment benchmarks by 22%. It now employs 38 people in an underserved area. It has also opened a scholarship fund for students in the local district. That's not corruption. That's impact." One senator leaned forward, eyebrows high. "Why didn't you fight the story harder in the media?" Kennedy's answer was ice cold and surgical. "Because I'm not here to win headlines. I'm here to build something real. If I spent all my energy reacting to noise, I'd never get to the work. And the work is bigger than my name." By the time the hearing ended, the narrative had flipped. Headlines now read, "Royce confronts smear campaign with receipts." Senators impressed by Royce's discipline and documentation. Dominion CEO shows what accountability actually looks like. Amari opened Twitter and whispered. They tried to write her downfall and accidentally wrote her blueprint. That night, Kennedy stood on her balcony with a glass of still water and stared out across the lights of the city. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. They did the same thing to Shirley Chisholm. "Keep walking." She smiled. then whispered, "I'm not done walking yet." It was a strange thing watching a grand opening that felt more like a reckoning. No ribbon cutting. No corporate banners. Just a crowd of people gathering outside the freshly renovated branch of Dominion Federal on Florida Avenue SC. The new nameplate was simple. The Royce Center, a Dominion Federal branch. Founded on respect. And beneath it, in small brass letters, "Everyone is welcome. Everyone is seen." It was 11 a.m. sharp. Kennedy Royce stood just behind the glass doors, eyes closed for a beat, her fingers wrapped around a stack of handwritten notes she had no intention of using. When she stepped up to the mic, there were over 300 people watching in person and thousands more watching the live stream from across the country. And unlike every boardroom, hearing, or press conference before, this time, she wasn't defending anything. She was building something. She looked out over the crowd, smiled, and began. 3 weeks ago, I was asked to leave a bank I built. Not because I had broken a rule. Not because I was disruptive. But because I didn't look like someone who belonged in power. She paused, letting the breeze catch her breath. This wasn't the first time. And I know, for many of you out there, it wasn't your first time either. In the front row, a woman held her husband's hand tight, a Vietnam veteran with a cane and a hat that read Tuskegee Airman Tribute 332nd. 2 rows behind him, a pair of middle school girls whispered about how she looks like a superhero. Kennedy didn't hear them, but she didn't need to. She kept going. I've spent my entire career in rooms where I had to prove my right to be heard. I wore neutral tones. I memorized their language. I played by the rules I didn't write, in a game I wasn't invited to play. And the truth is, for a long time, I thought that was the price of success. She looked down at her notes, then folded them gently and slid them into her coat pocket. But what I've learned is this. You don't fix a broken house by changing the curtains. You tear out the rot. You rebuild it brick by brick. She turned toward the new building behind her. The doors weren't shut. They were propped open. A statement all their own. This branch is more than a rebranding. It's a promise. You won't be profiled here. You won't be told to wait in the lobby while someone checks your appointment. You won't be asked to prove you belong. Because walking through the door is proof enough. Then her voice dropped, softer, deeper, speaking directly to someone not in the crowd. To the man who walked me to school every morning before his shift at the postal depot, who couldn't get a mortgage from the bank he delivered mail to for 29 years. She looked up. "This is for you, Daddy." Silence. And then applause. Thunderous. Raw. She waited. Let it rise and fall. Then stepped back toward the mic one final time. "And now I want to speak directly to you. Yes, you, the one watching this in your car, in your living room, or on your lunch break. Have you ever had someone look at you like you didn't belong in your own life? Have you ever been told to sit down when you built the damn chair? Have you ever been so polite for so long, you forgot what your voice sounded like when you used it for yourself?" She pointed gently toward the open doors. "Then come in. This is your space, your branch, your moment." To every man who aged out of his job and never got a handshake. To every woman whose resume got discarded because her name didn't sound professional. To every kid who saw their parent come home tired and unthanked. You were never invisible. They just weren't looking. The music began to play softly behind her, a slow instrumental of lift every voice and sing. But Kennedy stayed still. One more message. One more truth. They asked me to leave that morning because they couldn't see me. So I decided to make sure they'd never be able to ignore me again. Power isn't always loud, but when it finally speaks, you'll feel it. As she stepped down from the stage, a young boy, maybe 10, ran forward and held out a small piece of paper. She opened it. A drawing, stick figure Kennedy in a blazer, standing in front of a building that said her bank. He wrote in crayon, "One day I'll be the boss too." She knelt down and whispered, "Then don't wait to be invited. Build your own table." And to everyone who heard this story today, if it reminded you of something you lived through or someone you love, don't just nod. Don't just agree. Share it. Say their name. And when someone tells you that you don't belong, tell them, "I wasn't sent. I was born for this." Because Kennedy didn't just walk back into that bank. She rebuilt it. And now, it's ours.